Upgrading characters in Genshin gets really expensive, so what would happen if I decided to upgrade every single one of them? Well, that's just what I asked myself 2 years ago. I wanted to max out every single character that I owned, but upgrades in Genshin require a lot of different materials, so I decided to break the project up into 3 different steps: maxing levels, maxing traces, and finally maxing weapons. But if I had known when I started in September of 2023 just how expensive this project really was, I might have never started in the first place. To fully upgrade a character in Genshin, you're gonna need 10 different things: overworld boss drops, regional specialties, elemental gemstones, talent enhancement materials, overworld enemy drops, weekly boss drops, enhancement ores, weapon ascension materials, character XP books, and of course, a whole heap of Mora, Genshin's equivalent to gold. Now, the reason this project is so time consuming and often why a lot of people criticize Genshin's grindiness is because 6 of these materials are resin locked. Resin is Genshin's form of energy and it regenerates at a rate of 1 unit per 8 real world minutes. The cheapest materials in Genshin cost a minimum of 20 resin, meaning to get 1 drop of the cheapest materials it costs 160 real life minutes. So with that in mind, let's see just what it costs to finish step 1, maxing character levels. Now luckily, I've already finished step 1, and if you haven't seen them already, I have 2 videos that you can enjoy that I'll link in the description below. Unfortunately, I wasn't keeping a great track of materials at that time, so I'll have to show you the math instead of a nice clean before and after photo. Now stick with me because it is going to get a little bit nerdy. As I said before, there are a couple different materials you need to take a character to level 90. You need overworld boss drops, regional specialties, elemental gemstones, gold, and XP books. Of these 5 materials, only the regional specialties are farmable without resin, and even though you need 165 of each of the specialty, they respawn daily, so it's really not worth talking about. Once a character hits a certain level, they require an ascension, which is a fancy way of saying extra materials, because why would anything in life be easy? In total, there are 6 ascensions a character must go through, costing 420,000 gold, 46 overworld boss drops, and a bunch of different elemental gemstones. Unfortunately, there is a lot of weird RNG loot table drops when it comes to characters in this game, so whenever I don't have exact numbers, I'll be doing my best to average stuff and round it out accordingly. At world level 8, each overworld boss has an average drop rate of 2.55 materials. There is an increase for boss drops at world level 9, but unfortunately for me, I actually farmed most of my character bosses before world level 9 was even introduced. At world level 8, I had 57 different characters, not including Lumine because she actually uses a special resource and doesn't need boss drops or gemstones, so I needed 2,576 total boss drops. This means I had to do about 1,010 different boss runs. Each overworld boss costs 40 resin, so in total I spent 4,400 resin. Character ascensions also cost elemental gemstones, and unfortunately I ran out during my first video. Past me wasn't too interested in numbers, so we're gonna have to get creative to figure out just how many I farmed. Midway through the video, I had 5 characters left to ascend and 1 that I was pre-farming for. Each character needs 6 gemstones, 9 chunks, 9 shards, and 1 sliver to fully ascend. So if we add up the total number of materials from the screenshot, you can see I still needed 7 more gemstones. And of course we're ignoring the type because the Dust of Azoth allows you to convert them between each other. The character I was pre-farming for was Kirara, and since the Ubiquitous Baptist can drop 4 different elements, I decided to farm them for the missing stones. Before spending resin, I had 13 Evergloom rings, and after using 46 for Kirara, I still have 6 more. That means I ended up with 52 Evergloom rings, farming an additional 39. If you divide that by the average drop rate at world level 8, you get about 15 runs. That adds another 600 resin, bringing the total resin cost so far up to 41,000. Additionally, I spent 23,940,000 Mora on ascension costs. But this video is almost a year old, and I currently own 69 characters. Unfortunately, this means the information from my old videos is going to be outdated because I'm looking at the total cost for this entire project. I also want to point out that I obtained these 12 new characters after the world level 9 update, so the boss material drop rate got buffed from about 2.55 to 3.5. This means the new characters add on 6,320 resin and 5,040,000 gold for a total cost of 47,320 resin and 28,000,000 980,000 Mora. But there's also the additional cost of leveling the characters themselves. To make it easier, I'm going to condense the XP into the equivalent amount of Hero's Wits. One Hero's Wits is equal to 20,000 XP, and it just makes things easier rather than using all 3 different types of books. So that means to level a character from 1 to 90, it costs 419 Hero's Wits and 1,673,400 Mora. So that means an extra 28,911 Hero's Wits and 115,464,600 gold. XP leylines at world level 9 drop the equivalent of about 6 Hero's Wits per run. This means the 28,911 Hero's Wits cost me about 96,370 resin. This brings the total cost for step 1 of the project to 144,444,600 total Mora and 143,690 resin. I do also want to point out a big variable here, and that is the rewards for just playing the game. For the past year or so, I've been working on 100%ing the entire map, which in turn gives a lot of resources like XP and Ascension materials. I'm also not factoring in other small sources of resources like the parametric transformer, events, teapot shop, or daily commissions, as those are nearly impossible for me to keep track of in post. This is important because the total resin cost so far of 143,690 is equivalent to 798 days worth of resin. So while these sources are small, they do significantly add up over the course of time. Basically, the numbers I'm showing you are the maximum possible costs if you never play the game outside of just farming. With that in mind, let's take a look at step 2. Since I'm currently working on maxing all character talents, I actually have a very detailed spreadsheet to list all my resources. You can see I have every character here listed, and they're separated by nation and then also by specific talent domain, as those are separated by weekly days. To level a character's talents, you need 3 materials in addition to the Mora cost: talent ascension materials, overworld enemy drops, and weekly boss drops. As with the regional specialties, the overworld materials are non-resin based, so we can completely ignore them for the purposes of this video. At this point, I want to remind you that these talent materials are not only resin locked, but also time locked, as each domain can only be accessed 3 days out of the week, 2 specific weekdays, and then every domain is open on Sunday. Furthermore, the weekly boss materials are actually only farmable once per week. Yes, I can do multiple bosses per week, but only each boss once per week. It's also going to be impossible for me to accurately judge the resin cost for this step because the weekly bosses have 3 instances of discounts per week. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's take a look at the Mora cost for this step. Taking a character's talents from level 1 to 9 costs 952,500 Mora. Since I plan on taking every character to triple max talents, obviously ignoring crowns, it's going to cost 2,857,500 gold per character. Also for this step, much like with the bosses, I'm not going to be including Lumine, and this is because she has 6 different forms currently. Eventually I will max out all her forms when Cryo Traveler becomes a thing, but as it stands, 6 different characters to keep track of for the same character is a lot of work, and I just don't want to deal with it. Especially because a lot of those Traveler variants are just not usable. Hydro Traveler, and I only really use the Dendro Traveler. So with Lumine removed, I'll need to spend 194,310,000 more on talents, bringing the total gold cost for phase 1 and 2 up to a staggering 338,754,600 Mora. On my spreadsheet, you can see I have every character's current talent levels and also the cost to level their talents from whatever they're at to max level over here. I currently have calculated that I need 152,255,000 Mora to complete this stage, meaning I've already spent 186,499,600 Mora on this project, and saying that out loud makes me feel really poor. But as I said, it's going to unfortunately be impossible for me to accurately calculate resin costs for this stage. Talent domains similar to gemstones have this weird drop rate loot table that's really weird. Because I can't know exactly how much resin I needed, I'll have to make some inferences. To level up a character's talents, you need 3 different tiers of books. In total, you need 9 of the 2-star drops, 63 of the 3-star drops, and 66 of the 4-star drops. Also, to make it easier from now on, any 2-star materials will be called green materials, any 3-star materials will be called blue materials, Any 4-star materials will be called purple materials, and any 5-star materials will be called gold materials, because it's just easier, and I'm going to be saying these different tiers of materials a lot. Talent domains have a minimum drop rate of 2 blue and 2 green materials each. To level a lower tier material into a higher one, you need 3 of that specific drop. So 3 green will make 1 blue. In total, I need 612 green, 4,284 blue, and 4,488 purple talent materials. Assuming each run gives me a minimum drop rate, I need 204 total runs to acquire all the green materials, which will also net me 612 blue materials. Assuming at that point I can convert all green books to blue, the average drop rate for blue books becomes 2.66, meaning I need an additional 1,380 runs. After completing this, all the materials will then be converted into purple, meaning the average purple drop rate becomes 0.8866. This comes out to another 5,062 total runs for purple books. In total, the maximum number of runs I need for all the talent materials is 6,646, obviously split across a bunch of different domains. While the Genshin wiki does provide an average drop rate for each material, I unfortunately don't understand math enough to actually figure anything out. Stay in school, kids. So for now, I'll keep the resin cost at 132,920. In addition to the normal talent materials, each talent needs weekly boss talent materials. In total, each talent needs 4 weekly drops to be maxed out. Also, each weekly boss has 3 different possible drops, but you can convert any of the 3 into the other option, so I'll be ignoring that little caveat. Weekly bosses have an average drop rate of 2.4, which makes math so much easier. Since every character is going to need 12 weekly drops, I need to do a total of 240 runs. Now this is where the accuracy is going to be a bit muddy again. Weekly bosses have 3 discounts per week, taking the resin cost from 60 down to 30, but this discount was introduced in version 1.5 with the release of Ajdaha. This is significant because I've actually done weekly bosses almost every single week I've played the game. I also frequently do more than 3 bosses per week, which means it's impossible for me to determine the average cost of each weekly. So while it won't be accurate, I'm going to average the total resin cost of each weekly to about 40 resin. That means I need to spend around 9,600 resin on weeklies. So my best approximation of what phase 2 will cost is 142,520 resin and 192,310,000 Mora, bringing the total cost of the project for phases 1 and 2 up to 338,754,600 Mora and 286,210 resin. For those curious, that's equal to 38,161 hours, or 1,590 days, or 4.356 years. Just under 4.5 years of logging in every single day and not capping resin just to finish the first 2 steps. And again, this is assuming every single talent drop you get is the minimum possible drop rate. So with step 2 out of the way, we can finally move on to the final stage, maxing character weapons. In Genshin, the rarity of the weapon actually changes the material cost. As you can see, the lower rarity weapons are actually cheaper to upgrade. I currently have equipped to my characters 11 5-star weapons, 57 4-star weapons, and 1 3-star weapon. I also found this website that averages the total resin cost for weapons and talents. I checked the estimated resin cost for talents, but it came out very similar to my math, so I just kept my math as it is. The site averages 5-star weapons to cost 400 resin, 4 stars to cost 260 resin, and 3 stars to cost 200 resin. This takes the total cost for stage 3 to 19,420 resin and 11,130,000 Mora. As enhancement ore is the main material for upgrading weapons and is a non-resin based item, stage 3 is unsurprisingly the cheapest of all the stages. In fact, you may be wondering why I don't choose to do weapons instead of talents if it's so much easier. The answer to that is simply shut up. But in actuality, weapons are the least important aspect for a character's strength because they're not inherently tied to the character. If 50 of my characters are supports built with Favonius and sacrificial weapons, I could conceivably just swap the weapons between each other whenever I need them. So while I do plan on giving each character their own weapon eventually, it's not necessary. The final goal is to be able to play with any character at any time, so as long as their level and talents are upgraded, it really won't matter what their weapon is. So with all that said and done, let's take a look at just how much it takes to max every single character in Genshin. The final Mora cost ended up being 394,701,000. The final resin cost ended up being 305,630, which is equivalent to 5,094 fragile resin. That's the equivalent of 4 years, 7 months, 23 days, 21 hours, and 7.2 minutes. Ow, my elbow. I still need to spend 208,200,000 201,400 more to finish this project, and honestly I tried to calculate the resin I needed, but it was way too much work, so I didn't do it. Now you may be wondering, what was the purpose of this video? And that is a great question. Honestly, I just wanted to show off the scope of this project. I've been working diligently on this project for almost 2 years straight. The project itself isn't actually that hard because most of the work gets done passively. There's not much else I can do other than spend my resin consistently. The last video I made on this project is my most popular video ever, and I want to do more, but I literally can't. This project takes so long because it's time locked. I can work on other stuff in the meantime, but this one just cannot go faster. Even using all of my 200 saved up fragile resin would barely make a dent in what I have left to do, because in addition to the hundreds of thousands of resin I still need to spend on materials, I would still need to spend over 600,000 resin just to get enough Mora to do this. Since there's really no way I can speed up these videos, I thought it would be both fun and informative to show you a little behind the scenes of what goes into these videos. I do plan on making smaller updates, like maxing every single character in mondsdadt, just so I can have a bit more frequent of an update process. But if you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you so much. If you're invested into this project and want to see where it goes, consider subscribing so you don't miss future updates. If you're really invested in this and want to support me, consider becoming a member. You get access to behind the scenes videos and emotes, and you even get this cute little badge I made if you ever comment on videos or live streams. But that's enough shelling out for today, so I think that's it. That's all I got for you. As always, thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.
That won't ever change. Yeah, sometimes I'm mad, sometimes I'm okay. Yeah, I know I'll have what I want someday. I need my space now so I can feel nothing. I live this nightmare so I can be something. Yeah. I do what I love and hope you will love me. Yeah. I face this